WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. The Boston City Council is steeped in tension right now as the legislative body appears to be divided along racial lines. And scandals involving individual councilors are not helping the situation. Boston Globe City Hall reporter Danny McDonald has been following the mess, and he is here to talk to us all about it. So, Danny, I have a question here. Tell me, how is the beat these days?
It's busy, as it always is. Lots of stuff going on in City Hall. And the Boston City Council in particular keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, it's a little messy over there, I hear.
Yeah, it's quite divisive. And it's been like that for, I would say, almost a year now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's get into it. Because last week, you wrote a story about how Boston City Council President Ed Flynn is unhappy with the negative attention the council has been getting lately, particularly in light of Councilor Ricardo Arroyo admitting to an ethics violation and Councilor Kendra Lara recently being involved in a car crash. For folks who may not have heard, can you bring us up to speed on those two situations?
Sure. So really quickly, Ricardo Arroyo admitted to an ethics violation basically connected to a conflict of interest where he was representing his brother, Felix Arroyo, who was a former city councilor himself. He was a former city hall cabinet chief in a sexual harassment case that involved the city while Ricardo Arroyo was a sitting member of the city council. So basically, the State Ethics Commission found that repping his brother while he was a city councilor in that case constituted a conflict of interest and an ethics violation, and Ricardo Arroyo had to pay a $3,000 fine.
And Danny, real quick, whatever came from the allegations that former U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins was advising Ricardo Arroyo during his campaign for Suffolk County District Attorney?
Well, nothing in terms of the State Ethics Commission as of yet.
Okay.
Obviously, that is part of the backdrop here where, one counselor, I believe it was Aaron Murphy, said that Ricardo Arroyo should consider resigning in the wake of the whole Rachel Rollins fiasco, where basically it appeared that Rachel Rollins was trying to influence the outcome of last year's Suffolk District Attorney race in which Ricardo Arroyo was running.
So this particular ethics violation is completely unrelated to that.
Correct. Had nothing to do with the Rollins mess. The Kendra Lara situation, basically, Councilor Lara is alleged to have crashed a car in Jamaica Plain on Center Street. Her license was allegedly revoked at the time of the crash, and the car was alleged to have been unregistered. So that's what Councilor Ed Flynn was referencing in his recent press release, saying, he's basically sick of the negative attention that events like that and the ethics violation of Ricardo Arroyo are bringing to the institution of the Boston City Council.
And Danny, I want to ask you about Councilor Tanya Fernandez-Anderson, who apparently has been the subject of threatening racist and sexist messages. She said that her colleagues have been part of inciting those threats. Can you talk about that?
For more context, Tanya Fernandez-Anderson is the chairwoman of the Ways and Means Committee of the Boston City Council. The Ways and Means Committee is basically the central committee that oversees the budgetary process for the council. That has been a contentious process this year. And in the midst of that process, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson has said that she's received death threats, Islamophobic and xenophobic threats. Fernandez-Anderson is the first Muslim to be elected to the Boston City Council, and she's also the first African immigrant to be elected to the Boston City Council. There is a divide right now, largely along racial lines on the council. I don't think you can watch and observe the council meetings for the past year or so and come away with any other conclusion. There's a core group of more conservative and centrist councilors who are white, who are often clashing with a group of more progressive councilors who are councilors of color. There is a very real rift there on the council.
What does this tell us about where the city is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's probably the central question, the main question. Obviously, Boston has a lengthy, brutal, and well-documented history of racism and segregation. If anything, these council tensions are indicative of the fact that, the city is still healing from a lot of those wounds, and there's more work needs to be done. If anything, the city council is reflective of the city of Boston's electorate, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that these divides and tensions are very real and ongoing, I think, speaks to that unfortunate history of racism in Boston.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. With this tension that's on the council, it seems like it's reflecting a change, a shift in the city towards something more positive, more inclusive, more diverse, right? Because this city council body that is serving right now is the most diverse the council's ever been in history. Am I correct?
Right. It's fair to say it's one of the most diverse iterations of the city council.
Okay.
Yes. And certainly more diverse than in decades past, for sure. And yeah, there's a lot of new blood on the council. There may be more newcomers this fall. We know that Frank Baker, longtime city councilor and the most conservative Boston city councilor, is not running for re-election. Michael Flaherty, an at-large city councilor, he's not running for re-election. He's been around for a while. Mm-hmm. So we may see more new faces this fall. So I think your read of it is correct in that what we're seeing is a change in the political face of the city and what that looks like. And these tensions are directly a result of that.
You mentioned new faces that we could be seeing in the fall. Could these new faces lead to a more harmonious legislative body, where people are getting along?
I mean, potentially, yes, but only time will tell. And again, we're talking about a collection of politicians, mm-hmm. right? And wherever there's politicians, there's ego. And wherever there's politicians, there's power, and there's going to be jockeying for that power. Mm-hmm. I guess I would answer that by saying time will tell.
I guess I wonder, too, about the constituents here. How do they feel about how these councilors are getting along? Do they care? Are they tired of the drama?
That is one thing you do hear in the city, that people are fatigued from the infighting. And I hear that from folks from all sides of the political spectrum, that they are exhausted from all the fighting and the tension. Mm-hmm. Whether that will matter at the ballot box, again, I wouldn't guess one way or the other on that.
Now I want to ask you this. Recently, the council has worked on a couple of pretty intense projects, right? You got redistricting and the budget. Based on those two projects, how would you say this group does when it comes to getting work done compared to past councils?
Yeah, it's a good question. The ball game when it comes to political power on the city level is still very much in the mayor's office, which is to say the council has a little bit more power now than it had in years past, although they haven't really flexed that budgetary power. But the city of Boston is still very much a strong mayor system. The budgetary process just recently wrapped up. The council basically had 5 overrides, which were 5 opportunities to change or reject different facets of Michelle Wu's budget. 4 of those overrides they failed to pass. They only passed 1 of them. So, you're still talking about an operating budget that is the vast majority of which it's Michelle Wu's budget. You know what I mean? They only changed the 1 override, even though they have the power now to do that, which they, in past years, they did not. I mean, the redistricting process was, it was messy. I don't think anyone would quibble with that. The council initially had approved 1 map that was challenged in court, and ultimately a federal court basically rejected the map that the council approved and sent them back to the drawing board, so to speak. So, I mean, those are, the most important things that the council does is redraw the district lines and pass the annual budget. Mm-hmm. And I mean, ultimately they did those things with the budget. Their quote unquote stamp on it was minimal at the end of the day. And with regards to redistricting, they had a map that passed after a very divisive process. And then a federal court stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So, I'll leave it to others to, define whether or not that's what success looks like for the Boston City Council. But I mean, that's the reality of the past year.
So basically, the city council is messy. There are some tensions that need to be resolved and worked out, but they are getting something done for the benefit of the city.
Yeah, sure.
They're doing their job.
Sure, at the end of the day. But I think what irritates constituents that I talk to and political observers that I talk to is that sometimes the noise drowns out the work. Mm-hmm. Everyone becomes fixated on the various personal rivalries, which are very real. Make no mistake, are very real. But what gets lost sometimes is the the priorities of the city of Boston. That's what some observers feel like is getting lost, is that like, okay, you guys are there to do the work, to serve folks, and you're just yelling at each other, basically.
Understood. Danny, thank you so much for your reporting. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming through, talking to us here at The Common. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Daryl. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Boston Globe City Hall reporter Danny McDonald. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. Tell us, what do you think of all this tension and mess between Boston City councilors? Let us know. Hit us up on Instagram at WBUR-TheCommon or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.